It's been 3 years since then. 3 years of wonder. What would have happened if I had stayed? Would the Alpha King accept us? Would he take my child away from me? Or would I be his little secret while he married someone else? I was lost in thoughts till my beautiful boy pulled me out. Papa, look. I looked up from the inventory I was doing to see my son, Kian, holding up a book almost as big as he was. At 3 years old, he was beautiful. Dark hair that curled at the ends, pale skin, and the most striking feature of all, silver eyes that were an exact copy of his father's. Every time I looked at him, I saw Dmitri. It was painful and wonderful at the same time. That's a very big book, I said with a smile. Can you read it? Not yet, but you can teach me. He dragged the book over to me, determination written all over his little face. That was pure Dmitri too, the stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Kian had been walking at 9 months, talking in full sentences by 18 months. He was smart, unnaturally so, and strong. At 3 years old, he could already lift things that should have been too heavy for him. Alpha traits. Strong alpha traits. It terrified me sometimes, how much power was contained in his small body. He didn't understand what he was yet, didn't understand that he was different. But someday he would. Someday, I'd have to explain why he had a king's eyes and a king's strength, but no father in sight. I wasn't looking forward to that conversation. All right, I said, setting down my clipboard. Let's see what we have here. The book was a collection of fairy tales. Of course, Kian loved stories about knights and dragons and magical kingdoms. He didn't know his own story was stranger than any fairy tale. I settled into the reading chair and pulled him into my lap. He snuggled against me, his small body warm and trusting. These moments, just the two of us, safe in Rose's bookshop, were what I lived for now. Once upon a time, I began, there was a kingdom ruled by a wise and powerful king. Life in Dalvik had settled into a routine over the past 3 years. Rosa had given me more hours at the shop, and even let me bring Kian to work when I couldn't afford childcare. We lived in a small apartment now, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I'd made friends with other parents at the playground, built a life that was simple but stable. It wasn't the life I'd dreamed of, but it was enough. Except for the bond. The bond had never fully disappeared. Even muted by distance and suppressants, I could still feel Dmitri sometimes. Late at night, when the world was quiet, I'd feel echoes of his emotions. Loneliness. Anger. A deep, persistent sadness that never quite went away. He hadn't bonded with anyone else. I would have felt it if he had. The thought gave me a guilty sort of relief. I didn't want him to be alone, but I also couldn't bear the thought of him with someone else. Selfish. I was so selfish. Papa, why do the stories always have a king? Kian asked, interrupting my thoughts. Because kings are important, I said. They take care of their kingdoms and protect their people. Do I have a daddy? My breath caught. He'd asked this question before, but it never got easier to answer. Yes, baby. Everyone has a papa. Where is he? He's far away. He has important work to do. Does he know about me? No, I said honestly. But if he did, he would love you very much. I promise. Kian seemed to accept this, snuggling closer. Okay, will I meet him someday? Maybe, I whispered, even though I knew it would never happen. Maybe someday. The bell above the shop door chimed, signaling a customer. I looked up, expecting to see one of our regulars. Instead, I saw 2 men in expensive suits. They had the bearing of alphas, confident, powerful, dangerous. And they were looking directly at me. My blood ran cold. Can I help you? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. We're looking for someone, one of them said. An Omega who disappeared from the capital 3 years ago. We have reason to believe he might be in this area. No, this couldn't be happening. I don't know anything about that, I said. The man's eyes flickered to Kian, who was still in my lap. To his silver eyes that were so distinctive, so impossible to hide. That's an unusual eye color, he said casually. Almost looks like. Is there something I can help you gentlemen find? Rosa appeared from the back room, her voice sharp. This is a bookshop, not an interrogation room. The men exchanged glances. Just looking, one of them said. But they didn't leave. They browsed the shelves, their attention constantly drifting back to me and Kian. They knew. Somehow they knew. I needed to get out of here. Needed to run. But where could I go? They'd found me once, they'd find me again. Kian, I whispered. Go help Miss Rosa in the back, okay? But Papa. Now, baby. Please. He must have heard the fear in my voice because he went without arguing. casting worried glances back at me. The moment he was gone, one of the men approached the counter. Listen, we don't want trouble. We're just trying to locate someone for our employer. If you know anything. I don't. The king has been searching for 3 years, he said quietly. He never stopped. Never gave up. And when reports came in about an Omega living here with a child who has silver eyes, he trailed off meaningfully. My hands were shaking. I don't know what you're talking about. He just wants to see you. Just wants to talk. No one's in trouble. I'm not interested. The man sighed. I understand you're scared. But running away again won't help. The king is. He's not doing well. The bond. Don't, I said sharply. Don't talk to me about the bond. He deserves to know about his son. And there it was. The truth I'd been running from for 3 years. Get out, I said. Get out of my shop, and tell your king that I don't want to be found. The men looked at each other again. Then, to my surprise, they nodded and left without another word. But I knew this wasn't over. They'd found me, which meant Dmitri would find me. And then everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed, would come crashing down. I sank into the chair, my whole body shaking. Through the bond, clearer now than it had been in years, I felt a surge of emotion from Dmitri. Hope. Desperate, overwhelming hope. He was coming. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my apartment window made me jump. Every car that passed, every footstep in the hallway. I was convinced it was him. That Dmitri had gotten on the first plane to Dalvik and was coming to take Kian away from me. Kian slept peacefully in his small bed across the room, one hand curled under his cheek, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. I watched him in the dim light, memorizing every detail of his face. His long eyelashes, the slight curl of his hair, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. What would Dmitri do when he saw him? Would he be angry that I'd kept his son a secret? Would he try to take Kian back to the capital? Would he hate me for running? Through the bond, I could feel him. He was closer now, much closer. The distance between us was shrinking with every passing hour. The suppressants I'd been taking couldn't mask the connection anymore. Not when we were this close to each other. I could feel his determination, his desperate need to find us. And underneath it all, a pain so deep it made my chest ache. I'd done that to him. I'd caused that pain. At dawn, I got up and made breakfast on autopilot. Kian woke up cheerful as always, chattering about the book we'd been reading yesterday, and asking if we could go to the park later. Maybe, I said, though I knew we couldn't. We needed to stay inside. Stay hidden. But even as I thought it, I knew it was pointless. They'd found us. There was nowhere left to run. Papa, you look sad, Kian said, his silver eyes studying me with that unsettling intelligence. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. Just tired. Is it because of those men yesterday? Too smart. He was too smart for his own good. Don't worry about that. Everything's going to be fine. I was lying, and I think he knew it. But he was 3 years old, so he accepted my reassurance and went back to his breakfast. I called Rosa and told her I wouldn't be coming in today. She didn't ask questions, just told me to take care of myself and Kian. She'd been so good to us over the years. A grandmother figure to Kian, a parental figure to me. I didn't know what I would have done without her. The morning dragged on. I tried to distract myself by cleaning the apartment, playing with Kian, reading stories. But I couldn't focus on anything. The bond kept pulsing, getting stronger and stronger. He was here. In Dalvik. Around noon, someone knocked on my door. My heart stopped. Stay in your room, I told Kian. Don't come out until I tell you it's okay. But Papa. Kian. Please. Something in my voice must have scared him, because he ran to his room without another word. I approached the door slowly, my hands shaking. Through the peephole, I could see a figure standing in the hallway. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair. Dmitri. For 3 years, I'd imagined this moment. Sometimes in my nightmares, sometimes in dreams I didn't want to admit I had. But nothing had prepared me for the reality of it. I opened the door. He looked the same but different. Still beautiful, still powerful, but there was a hardness to him now that hadn't been there before. Dark circles under his eyes, a tension in his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights and constant stress. His silver eyes, the same eyes Kian had inherited, locked onto mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Elian. My name was barely a whisper. Your Majesty. I couldn't call him Dmitri. It felt too intimate, too painful. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't call me that. Not you. We stood there for a long moment, just staring at each other. Through the bond, I could feel everything he was feeling. Relief at finding me. Anger at what I'd done. Hurt that cut so deep it made me want to cry. And beneath it all, love. Still, after everything, he still loved me. "Can I come in?" he asked. I wanted to say no. Wanted to slam the door in his face and pretend this wasn't happening. But I'd run out of options. Run out of places to hide. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into my small apartment, his expensive suit and regal bearing completely out of place in the modest space. His eyes took in everything. The worn furniture, the toys scattered across the floor, the pictures on the wall. He stopped at a drawing Kian had made last week. A crayon picture of two stick figures, one big and one small, holding hands. "Me and Papa," Kian had written in shaky letters at the bottom. Dmitri touched the drawing gently, his hand trembling. "Where is he?" he asked quietly. "In his room. His name is Kian?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "You named him after my father." Yes. I thought you'd want." My voice broke. "I thought you deserved to be part of his name, at least." Dmitri turned to face me, and the look on his face was devastating. "You thought I'd want that? You thought stealing my son and disappearing for 3 years was honoring me? I wasn't stealing him. He's mine. He's ours." The alpha command in his voice made me flinch. "He's our son, Elian. Mine and yours. And you took him away from me before I even knew he existed. Because staying would have destroyed you." The words burst out of me, loud and desperate. "The council would never have accepted us. They were already planning your marriage to someone else. If I'd stayed, if they'd found out I was pregnant, I would have protected you. Both of you. At what cost? Your crown? Your kingdom? Everything you'd worked for." "Yes." He stepped closer, and I could see the raw emotion in his eyes. "Yes, Elian. I would have given it all up for you. Don't you understand that? When you left, when I couldn't find you, it was like someone had ripped out my heart. For 3 years, I've barely been able to function. The council thinks I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am. But I couldn't stop searching. Couldn't give up. Because you're mine, and I'm yours, and nothing else matters." Tears were streaming down my face now. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't need protection. I needed you." His voice softened. "I still need you." Before I could respond, a small voice came from behind me. "Papa?" I turned to see Kian standing in the doorway of his room, his silver eyes wide and curious. He was clutching his favorite stuffed dragon, the one Rosa had given him for his 2nd birthday. Dmitri went completely still. For a moment, neither of them moved, just stared at each other. Then Kian walked forward, completely unafraid, and stopped in front of Dmitri. He tilted his head, studying the tall Alpha with that unervingly intelligent gaze. "You smell like me," Kian said. Dmitri dropped to his knees, so he was at eye level with our son. His hands were shaking, and through the bond, I felt such overwhelming emotion it nearly knocked me over. Joy, wonder, love so fierce it was almost painful. "You're my son," Dmitri said, his voice breaking. Kian looked at me. "Papa? Is this my other Papa? The one who's far away?" I couldn't speak, could barely breathe, so I just nodded. Kian turned back to Dmitri, considering him carefully. "You have the same eyes as me." "Yes." Dmitri reached out slowly, like Kian might disappear if he moved too fast. Can I hug you?" Kian considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." Dmitri pulled him into his arms and held him like he was the most precious thing in the world. I watched as the Alpha King, the most powerful man in the kingdom, broke down and cried, his face buried in our son's hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't get to watch you grow. I'm sorry for everything you missed." "It's okay," Kian said, patting Dmitri's back awkwardly. "You're here now." Through the bond, I felt the moment it happened. The moment Dmitri's Alpha recognized Kian as his. The parental bond snapped into place, just as powerful as a mating bond. I could feel Dmitri's overwhelming need to protect, to provide, to never let Kian out of his sight again. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that our lives had just changed forever. Dmitri looked up at me, still holding Kian. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears, but there was steel in his expression now. Determination. "We're going to talk," he said. "About everything. About why you left, about our son, about what happens next. But first, I need you to understand something, Elian. I am never letting you disappear again. You're mine. Kian is mine. And I'm taking you both home. Dmitri. No arguments. Not this time." He stood up, still holding Kian, and moved closer to me. "You ran once, and it nearly destroyed me. I won't survive it a second time. So whatever problems we have, whatever obstacles the council puts in our way, we face them together. Understood? I wanted to argue. Wanted to explain all the reasons why this was a bad idea. But looking at him holding our son, seeing the determination in his eyes, feeling the strength of the bond between us, I realized I didn't want to run anymore. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we'll figure it out. Together. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out after years of darkness. He reached for me with his free arm and pulled me close, and for the first time in 3 years, I let myself lean into him. We stood there like that, the three of us, and I felt something I hadn't felt since that perfect night in the palace. Complete. But even as I let myself enjoy this moment, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings. The council still existed. The political obstacles that had driven me away were still there. And now we had Kian to protect. This wasn't a happy ending. It was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. We moved to the small couch. Kian settled between us like a bridge connecting two broken pieces. Dmitri hadn't let go of him since that first hug, one hand constantly touching our son's shoulder or hair, as if he needed the physical contact to believe he was real. I understood the feeling. Sometimes I still couldn't believe this brilliant, beautiful boy was mine. Tell me everything, Dmitri said, his eyes never leaving Kian. I want to know everything I missed. So I told him. About the pregnancy, how sick I'd been, how scared. About the day Kian was born, 3 weeks early in a free clinic with only Rosa beside me. About his first word, mama, his first steps, at 9 months, impossibly early. His first day of daycare, he'd cried for 10 minutes, then decided he loved it. He's smart, I said, unable to keep the pride out of my voice. Scary smart. He taught himself the alphabet by watching videos. He can do math in his head. And he's strong, stronger than any 3-year-old should be. Alpha traits, Dmitri said, his hand gentle on Kian's head. Strong alpha genetics. It runs in my family. He asks about you sometimes, I admitted quietly. Wants to know where his papa is, why you're not here. I never knew what to tell him. You could have told him the truth. That I was looking for him. That I would have moved heaven and earth to be here if I'd known. The accusation stung, but it was fair. I thought I was protecting everyone. Protecting you from political scandal. Protecting him from being used as a pawn. Protecting myself from. I trailed off. From what? From watching you marry someone else. From being your secret while you built a life with an Omega the council approved of. I met his eyes. Could you have done that, Dmitri? Could you have kept me and Kian hidden while you played happy families with someone else? His jaw clenched. I would never have. But they would have made you. You know how the council works. You know how much power they have. Had, he corrected, his voice cold. Past tense. I blinked. What? A lot has changed in 3 years, Elian. After you left, after I couldn't find you, I realized something. The council was never going to let me choose my own path. They were going to control every aspect of my life. Who I married, how I ruled, what decisions I made. So I broke them. Broke them? Systematically removed every member who opposed me. Replaced them with people who understood that the king's word is law, not the other way around. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Lord Petrov is living in exile in the Northern Territories now. Lord Aldrich lost his title and lands. The others, let's just say they learned that challenging me has consequences. I stared at him, shocked. The Dmitri I'd known had been strong but measured, willing to work within the system. This version of him, harder, colder, more ruthless, was different. You did all that for me? I did it for us. For the possibility that maybe, someday, I'd find you again. And I wanted to make sure that when I did, no one would dare try to take you from me. His silver eyes burned into mine. I meant what I said earlier, Elian. You're mine. Kian is mine. And anyone who tries to separate us will regret it. The alpha possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in my chest. For so long, I'd been alone. Fighting by myself, protecting Kian by myself, surviving by myself. The idea that someone wanted to fight for me, to protect me, it was overwhelming. Papa? Kian's small voice interrupted the intensity of the moment. Are you going to stay? Dmitri looked down at our son, his expression softening. Yes, I'm going to stay. Forever. Forever, Dmitri promised. I'm never leaving you again. Kian seemed satisfied with this answer. He yawned, exhausted from all the emotions of the day. Can you read me a story? I would love to. Dmitri looked at me. If that's okay with your mama? I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. Of course. We moved to Kian's small bedroom. Dmitri sat on the edge of the bed while I handed him the fairy tale book from yesterday. Kian snuggled under his blankets, his silver eyes already drooping. Dmitri began to read, his deep voice gentle and soothing. I stood in the doorway and watched them, father and son, together for the first time, like they'd been doing this every night for years. By the time Dmitri finished the story, Kian was asleep. Dmitri stood slowly, careful not to wake him. He touched Kian's face gently, his expression full of wonder and love and regret for all the moments he'd missed. "He's perfect," Dmitri whispered. "Thank you. For keeping him safe, for raising him, for giving me a son. He's half yours. You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." He followed me out of the bedroom, closing the door quietly behind us. "You did this alone for 3 years. That couldn't have been easy." It wasn't. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. There were times I thought about contacting you. Times I was so scared or so broke or so tired that I almost broke down and sent a message. But then I'd think about the council, about the danger, about how you'd be forced to choose between your duty and your son, and I couldn't do it. Dmitri sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. "You should have trusted me." Maybe. But I was 23 years old, pregnant and terrified. I made the best decision I could with the information I had. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I understand why you ran. I hate it, but I understand. What I don't understand is why you didn't come back. After Kian was born, after you'd had time to think. Why didn't you reach out?" "Because I'd already committed. I'd already built a life here. And every day that passed made it harder to imagine going back. What would I say? Sorry I disappeared and kept your son from you. But surprise, you're a father." I shook my head. It seemed easier to just stay hidden. Easier for who? For everyone. For you, for Kian, for me. "That's bullshit, Elian." His voice was sharp now, angry. "It wasn't easier for me. Do you have any idea what these 3 years have been like? I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely function. The bond was there constantly, reminding me that you existed somewhere, but I couldn't reach you. My ruts became unbearable, because my alpha was crying out for an omega who wasn't there. I almost died during the last one. My body was shutting down because it couldn't handle the separation anymore. I felt sick. I didn't know. How could you? You were too busy hiding from me." He stood up, pacing the small living room. "And what about Kian? You think it was better for him to grow up without a father? To wonder why his papa wasn't there? He was safe." I stood up too, anger rising to match his. He was happy and loved and safe. That's what mattered to me. Not politics, not bonds, not me apparently. The hurt in his voice stopped me cold. "That's not fair. Isn't it? You made a decision that affected all 3 of us without giving me a say. You decided I wasn't capable of protecting my own family. You decided my love wasn't enough to overcome obstacles. You decided for me, Elian. And that's what hurts the most." I sat back down, all the fight draining out of me. "You're right. I'm sorry. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I made the wrong choice. But I can't change the past. All I can do is try to figure out what comes next." Dmitri stopped pacing and looked at me. "What comes next is simple. You and Kian come back to the capital with me. I formally announce you as my mate and Kian as my heir. We complete the bond properly. We become the family we should have been from the start. And what about everyone who opposed us before? They might be gone from the council, but they still exist. Their allies still exist. The moment you announce me as your consort, half the kingdom will revolt. Let them try." His voice was cold. "I've spent 3 years consolidating power. I control the military, the treasury, the courts. Anyone who challenges me will lose. Quickly and decisively. You've become ruthless. I've become realistic. The Dmitri you knew 3 years ago was too soft, too willing to compromise. He lost the most important thing in his life, because he wasn't strong enough to fight for it. I won't make that mistake again." I didn't know what to say to that. This harder, darker version of Dmitri was intimidating. But underneath the cold exterior, I could still feel his emotions through the bond. Still feel the man I'd fallen for that perfect night. He was still in there. Just wrapped in armor now. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to think, time to prepare Kian, time to—" "No." Dmitri's voice was firm. "I've given you 3 years. I'm not giving you another day to talk yourself into running again. We're leaving tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "Dmitri, I have a job, an apartment, a life here, which you can say goodbye to tomorrow morning. I'll handle everything, packing, travel arrangements, everything. All you need to do is be ready." "This is insane. This is necessary. He moved closer, cupping my face in his hands. Elian, please. Don't fight me on this. Come home. Let me take care of you, and Kian the way I should have been doing all along. Let me prove that we can make this work. Through the bond, I felt his desperation, his fear that I might disappear again, his overwhelming need to keep us close. And I realized he was right. If I stayed here, I'd always be looking over my shoulder, always waiting for the next crisis. At least in the capital, under Dmitri's protection, we'd be safe. Or as safe as anyone could be in the political minefield of the royal court. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we'll go with you. The relief that flooded through the bond was staggering. Dmitri pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. Thank you, he breathed against my hair. Thank you. We stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other. And despite all my fears, despite all the unknowns ahead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Maybe we really could make this work. Maybe our fairy tale wasn't over after all. I never stopped wanting it, I admitted. I never stopped loving you, Dmitri. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every day, I wanted to come back. But I was so scared. I know, and I understand. But you need to trust me now, Elian. Trust that I can protect you and Kian. Trust that I'm strong enough to fight for us. He squeezed my hand. Can you do that? I looked into his silver eyes, the same eyes our son had inherited, and saw nothing but sincerity and love. Yes, I whispered. I trust you. The smile that broke across his face was beautiful. He pulled me closer, his hand cupping my cheek. Can I kiss you? I nodded, and he closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then the bond flared between us, that connection we'd both been suppressing for 3 years, and the kiss deepened. It was like coming home after a long journey, familiar and right and perfect. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. I've missed you, Dmitri whispered against my lips. So much. I've missed you too. When we get to the capital, there's going to be a media frenzy. Everyone will want to know where you've been, why you're back, who Kian is. Are you ready for that? No, I admitted. But I'll handle it. As long as you're beside me. Always. I'm never letting you out of my sight again. The rest of the flight passed in a blur. We talked about everything. What the last 3 years had been like for both of us. Plans for Kian's education. The formal announcement that would be made to the kingdom. By the time we landed in the capital, I felt more prepared. Still terrified, but prepared. A car was waiting for us on the tarmac. Dmitri carried a sleeping Kian while I followed, my heart pounding as we drove through the city streets I'd fled 3 years ago. Nothing had changed. The grand buildings, the busy streets, the palace looming in the distance. But everything had changed too. This time, I wasn't running. This time, I was coming home. The car pulled up to the palace, and guards immediately surrounded us. Dmitri carried Kian while I walked beside him, my head held high despite my nerves. Your Majesty, one of the guards said. The staff has prepared rooms for your guests. Not guests, Dmitri said firmly. This is Elian, my mate. And this is Kian, my son and heir. They're to be treated with the respect due to their positions. Anyone who disrespects them answers to me personally. The guard's eyes widened. Yes, Your Majesty. Of course. We were escorted through the palace to the royal wing. The same wing where I'd spent that perfect night 3 years ago. Dmitri led us to a massive suite, much larger than his previous chambers. These are the family apartments, he explained. I had them renovated last year. Hoping, he stopped, his voice catching. Hoping that maybe someday I'd need them. The suite was beautiful. A large living area, 3 bedrooms, and a bathroom that was bigger than my entire apartment in Dalvik. Dmitri laid Kian on one of the beds in the smallest bedroom, though even that was enormous by my standards. He'll need clothes, toys, everything, I said, suddenly overwhelmed. I didn't bring anything. I'll have it all taken care of, Dmitri assured me. Whatever he needs, whatever you need, just ask. I nodded, exhausted and emotionally drained. Get some rest, Dmitri said gently. Tomorrow, we'll start dealing with everything. But tonight, just rest. You're safe here. Both of you. Where will you sleep? The master bedroom is through there. But I can sleep on the couch if you're not comfortable. No. I grabbed his hand. Stay. Please. I don't want to be alone tonight. His eyes softened. Are you sure? I'm sure. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I fell asleep in Dmitri's arms. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't have nightmares. Because I was finally home. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Dmitri announced our return to the kingdom, and as predicted, it caused an uproar. The media went insane. Articles speculating about who I was, where I'd been, why the king had a secret son. Some outlets were supportive, celebrating the king's mate and heir. Others were vicious, calling me a gold digger, questioning Kian's legitimacy, demanding investigations. Through it all, Dmitri remained steady. He gave one press conference where he explained everything. Well, a carefully edited version of everything. He told them about our bond, about my fear of political persecution, about the 3 years we'd spent apart. He introduced Kian as his heir and made it clear that anyone who challenged our family would face consequences. The new council, filled with members loyal to Dmitri, unanimously approved my position as king consort. Laws were officially changed to allow common-born Omegas to hold royal titles. And slowly, the tide of public opinion began to turn in our favor. It helped that Kian was absolutely adorable. During his first public appearance, he waved at the cameras and announced, "I'm a prince," with such genuine excitement that even the harshest critics couldn't help but smile. But not everything was smooth. There were protesters outside the palace gates. Death threats that required increased security. Political rivals who tried to use our situation to undermine Dmitri's authority. And then there was the bond. "We need to complete it," Dmitri said one evening after Kian had gone to bed. "The partial bond is affecting both of us. My ruts are getting worse, and I can feel your heats approaching through our connection." He was right. The bond had been pulling at both of us, demanding completion. But completing it meant a permanent, unbreakable connection. It meant fully committing to this life. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of what?" "That I'm not good enough. That I'll fail at being king consort. That the kingdom will never truly accept me." I looked down at my hands. "That you'll regret choosing me." Dmitri moved closer, tilting my chin up. "Elian, listen to me. You are more than good enough. You raised our son alone for 3 years, built a life from nothing, survived when most people would have broken. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. But the politics, the diplomacy, all the things a consort is supposed to know. You'll learn. I'll teach you. My advisors will teach you. And if anyone has a problem with it, they can deal with me." His eyes were intense. "I don't want a perfect consort who was trained from birth. I want you. Stubborn, brave, beautiful you. That's all I've ever wanted." Tears pricked my eyes. "I love you. I love you too. So much." He kissed me softly. "So will you? Will you let me complete our bond? Will you marry me and become my king consort officially?" "Yes," I whispered. "Yes to all of it." The bonding ceremony was private. Just us, a few trusted advisors, and Kian, who was very excited about getting to wear a tiny crown for the occasion. This time, when Dmitri bit my neck, it was deep and permanent. The bond mark that would identify me as his mate for the rest of our lives. I bit him too, marking him as mine, and felt the bond snap fully into place. It was overwhelming. Suddenly, I could feel everything he felt, his love, his relief, his absolute certainty that this was right. And he could feel me too, could sense the depth of my feelings for him. We were connected. Truly, permanently connected. The public wedding came a month later. It was a massive affair. Thousands of guests, international dignitaries, media coverage from around the world. I was terrified, but Dmitri never left my side. When we exchanged vows in front of the entire kingdom, I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Dmitri's eyes, on the bond between us, on Kian standing beside us in his little prince outfit. This was my family. This was my home. The reception was endless. Dancing, speeches, congratulations from people I'd never met. But finally, late in the evening, Dmitri and I managed to steal a moment alone on one of the palace balconies. "Tired?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Exhausted, but happy." "Me too." He rested his chin on my shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a second chance. For trusting me. For being brave enough to come back." He turned me around to face him. "For giving me Kian. For giving me this life. For everything. You don't have to thank me. This is what I wanted too. I was just too scared to believe I could have it." "Well, believe it now. Because you're stuck with me forever." He grinned. "Literally. Bonded mates can't be separated." I laughed. "I think I can live with that." We stood there for a while, just holding each other and watching the city lights below. Inside, we could hear music and laughter, our wedding celebration continuing without us. "Do you think Kian's okay?" I asked. "Rosa has him. I saw them earlier. She was teaching him how to dance." "He's fine." Dmitri kissed my temple. Stop worrying. Everything is fine. Better than fine. He was right. Everything was fine. More than fine. 3 years ago, I'd run away from this palace believing I could never have a fairy tale ending. That people like me didn't get happy endings. But I'd been wrong. Sometimes fairy tales did come true. Sometimes love was enough. Sometimes, against all odds, you got your happy ending. And as I stood there in my mate's arms, wearing a crown and a completed bond mark, with our son safe and happy inside, I realized something important. I wasn't running anymore. I was finally truly home. Papa, Daddy, look what I can do. Kian stood in the middle of the training courtyard, concentrating hard. Suddenly, a practice dummy across the yard flew into the air and crashed into the wall. Dmitri and I exchanged looks. Did he just, I started, use Alpha command on an inanimate object? Yes. Dmitri looked impressed and concerned. He's getting stronger. We'll need to start his training soon. He's only 3.5. And already showing signs of being one of the strongest alphas in generations. Dmitri smiled. He's extraordinary. Just like his papa. I blushed. Even after 6 months of marriage, compliments from Dmitri still made me feel like a teenager. Your Majesties. An advisor approached, bowing. The council is ready for your meeting. We'll be right there. Dmitri turned to me. Ready to face another council session? As ready as I'll ever be. Actually, I was getting better at the political side of things. I'd never love it, all the maneuvering and careful wording and strategic alliances, but I was learning. And the new council respected me, which helped. Kian, I called. We have to go to a meeting. Rosa will be here soon to watch you. Okay. He ran over and hugged both of us. Love you. Love you too, little prince, Dmitri said, ruffling his hair. As we walked to the council chambers, Dmitri took my hand. Through the bond, I felt his contentment, his happiness, his absolute certainty that we were exactly where we were supposed to be. And I felt the same way. This was my life now. King consort to the Alpha King. Parent to an extraordinary child. Part of a family I'd thought I could never have. It wasn't always easy. There were still people who opposed us, still challenges we had to face. But we faced them together. And that made all the difference. As we entered the council chamber, I squeezed Dmitri's hand. He squeezed back, and through our bond, I felt his love washing over me. 3 years ago, I'd hidden my baby from the Alpha King. Now I stood beside him as his equal, his mate, his forever. And I wouldn't change a single thing.